All right, so welcome along, everybody. Today I am talking about nutrition, and more importantly, I'm talking about mindful eating. And the reason I do mindful eating is because I'm not a nutritionist. So when I do have clients who want very specific meal plans, I will refer them to a nutritionist. If they want to follow a particular diet, I will often discuss with them why they want to follow that diet, and if we still agree at the end of the conversation that it's worth following a diet. And if they have any questions, once again, I'll refer them to a nutritionist. But mindful eating is something that I've been doing pretty much my entire life, excuse me. And it is what I do with a lot of clients, so that they don't have to pay for the extra nutrition support. It's something that means they're not obsessing as well, because I find that with some styles of eating, you become quite obsessive. And so the process of mindful eating is an educational process as to what your body needs and how to get that without overthinking it. So without counting calories or having to overanalyze different foods, and the breakdowns of the foods. So before we begin, this is a bit of a workshop. So I've got a couple of people live with me. So those of you who are playing it back, you'll be able to sort of fast forward through anything that's not really relevant to you, or when we've got a bit of workshop time, you can fast forward that, pause or whatever. But the first thing I actually want you to do is to grab your pen and paper, and I want you just to write down the goal that you have in the immediate future, and the goal that you have, which is something we discussed in our enrollment call, of 12 months from now. So when you think about right now, what do I want to achieve? And in 12 months' time, how is that going to change my life? So we did that call. And if you recall, it wasn't specifically a number that we spoke about, whether it was losing fat or gaining muscle or whatever it was, but we spoke about different things. So I want you to literally list, and, if I've just sort of scribble down 5 or 6 things that I can think of, but things relating to how you would be feeling, things that you would relate to how you see yourself when you look in the mirror, perhaps wearing a particular type of clothing, energy wise. So I just want you to really sort of nut that out, because that's a really helpful part of the process in helping you to stay motivated to reach your goal and remembering your why. So keep jotting down a few things there and be really specific, not necessarily specific about a kilo amount of weight that you want to lose, but what does it look like when you look in the mirror? What does it look like on your body? How does it feel? So I'll give you just another couple of seconds. And that's something that I actually want you to carry through for the entire journey. I often will ask clients to put that on post-it notes, put that in particular spots in your house, on your fridge, next to your bed. Don't underestimate the power of having that constant reminder. And when it's not just, I want to lose 5, 10 kilos, when it's, I want to feel better, I want to be more mobile, whatever it is. So please, please, please nut that out. And, you can spend time perhaps adding to that. Or as we go through this process, perhaps you'll actually cross some of them off the list because you've already achieved it over the course of 12 weeks. So that'll be really exciting. So moving on, just expanding a little bit more on what eating mindfully is, learning what your body needs. And the important thing with this is that everybody is different. And that's why I do this as a workshop, because everyone has different needs. Everyone has different goals and everyone has different body types. So what you need is going to be different to what somebody else needs. And it's a really a lovely way to think of mindful eating is, once again, that it's sort of living with balance and not obsessing, which is something that I sort of try to steer clients away from, being obsessed with numbers on the scale, numbers with regards to food. Mindful eating is very repetitive because you learn what your body needs, and that often means that you are not limiting yourself, but you're actually eliminating the things that don't serve you and don't serve your goal. It's often quite simplistic. So repetitive and simplistic, you're eating similar foods to have that repetition, which makes life so easy. And the other thing with mindful eating is that it actually is about fueling your body, not so much just fueling your mouth or your mind, I guess. So it's actually fueling what your body needs and helping you to better understand what keeps you satiated and what keeps you full when you're hungry, when you're working out, what to have before a workout, what to have after a workout. And those are things we're going to touch on today quite briefly. And then I'm also going to expect you just to do a little bit of homework and look into other sources of foods that you might be interested in. So there's different methods, which I've mentioned already, to learning what your body needs. And there's the different ways to diet so that you can give your body what it needs. The first one is calorie counting. And with calorie counting, you are literally monitoring all the food that you take in so that you know the calorie content of that food. And then you know whether or not you're eating too many calories or perhaps under eating calories if you're trying to grow muscle. So calorie counting is one option. And that's a great way when you know your metabolic rate, the metabolism of your body, and how much energy your body uses, then you know whether you need to be in a deficit number. So if your metabolism, for example, is 1,400 calories a day, and that's when you do nothing. We're going to talk about this in more depth next week. That's the topic for next week, metabolism. But let's just say me sitting here burns 1,400 calories. When I do exercise, I'm going to burn another 400 calories. So that means I can eat 1,800 calories. I said 14 plus 400. So 1,800 calories is what I need in order to be in maintenance. If I want to lose body fat, I need to eat less than 1,800 calories. And that's where calorie counting can be quite specific for people. It also means that they can eat all the foods that they enjoy if it fits within their calories. Now, the reason I don't like that is because they're not actually nourishing their body. They're learning to count numbers, but they're not learning what foods are good for their body. And when we get into our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, we actually want to have a nourished body, not just a body that's fueled on high processed foods because the calories fit. So that's calorie counting, which obviously I'm not a huge fan of, but it can be very, very helpful just to understand what is in the food that you eat. The other way to learn what your body needs is through macro breakdowns. And a macro breakdown means that you actually learn what the food is, what type of food it is, and how much of that type of food your body needs. So let's break that down. The macro breakdown, there's protein, there's carbohydrate, and there's fat. Your body needs to have a certain amount of each of these to be nourished. If you don't get enough of the certain type of macronutrient, then you can be malnourished. So if you don't eat enough protein, your muscles are not going to get the fuel that they need in order to recover from workouts and to grow and build. So literally, if you're not eating enough protein, your muscles are not going to be building and they're just going to start breaking down. Protein is what repairs muscle and helps muscle to grow. Carbohydrate is energy, as we know, and there's different forms of carbohydrate, and then there's fats, which is really essential, good fats for our joints, our skin, also for our muscles, our hair follicles. Fats are really, really important. So again, if you're not getting good fats into your body, then you are causing, issues for your body to once again build on the important things that we need in our body. So that's macro breakdown. And understanding what macros are in certain foods can once again be really beneficial to make sure that you're not malnourished. So the best way for us to understand what our body needs is to learn about foods. And this is not going to be a workshop about learning, all different foods. That's something that you'll learn as you go. But we're going to plan what our body needs so that we can live day to day and sort of fuel our body in a way that we're not going to be too hungry at the end of the day and then end up binging, or not fueling our body in the morning so that when it gets to lunchtime, we're overeating. We're going to actually plan it now so that we know we have a better idea of what our body needs. And I really encourage all my clients to sit down and do this process. And they usually do it on their own, but I'm here to do that with you and to help you through it. So first thing is, when you think about what your goal is, does your goal involve losing body fat? And I think for those of you who are live at the moment, there is an element of that. So we need to think about foods that are going to have us more so in a deficit, which means we don't want to have too high calorie foods, too much high calorie. Now, the high calorie foods, as we know, are high fatty foods. And that can also be with really healthy foods like avocados or olive oil. They are really, really high in fat. So we need to be really conscious about the portion sizes. Now, there's a really easy way that I help clients to understand how much they need of certain macros of food, and that's by using your hands. So when you hold up your thumb, this amount of your thumb is literally how much fat you should be having per meal. So when you have an avocado, it's not half an avocado. It's like maybe a fifth of an avocado. And that is your intake for one meal. So by all means, you could have half an avocado, but then that's your fat intake for the day. Anyone who's having more than that obviously is going to be in a much higher calorie surplus. And over the course of a week, that adds up. So thinking about fats is really, really important. The other thing with regards to fats is the processed fats. So things that are deep fried, things that are high creamy, sugary, fatty foods, they're super high in calories. They're high in sugar, they're high in fats. And so you could have a sugary, fatty treat that is literally your calorie intake for the day. I was looking at, and I know this is probably not relevant to you, but just to give you an idea of if you can picture the McDonald's iced coffee drinks, iced chocolate, and they've got cream on top, that's about 400 calories just in a drink. So if you think about the calories that you would need for the day, and it might be around 1,500 calories, you're having one meal in a drink. And then you still want to have something with the drink. And then before you know it, you've had all your calories for the day in one meal. So having an understanding of fatty foods and the good fats and the quantity of the good fats is really, really important. The next thing is the carbohydrate, which there's a lot of, it's sort of, for me, it's negative, really negative association with carbohydrate. And to me, I think that's really dangerous. I think carbohydrates are essential, and carbohydrates are not the reason that we are obese. And people seem to demonize carbohydrates and say, bread is what makes me fat, or cakes are what make me fat. It's not the one specific nutrient group or macro group. It's the fact that people are eating way too many calories. So carbs are what actually fuel us for energy. So if you're going to do a workout, it's a great idea to have some carbs beforehand if you can stomach it, because that's going to give you more energy to have a better workout. And we'll get to that, what you should be eating before and after workouts and dinner time and breakfast later on. But just to give you an understanding of how important carbohydrates are, because, and I always sort of joke, there's that sort of running joke about, gosh, I don't want to sound racist with this, but with Asians that eat rice in most of their meals and they're still quite little. And, a lot of them are fairly lean and they'll eat an abundance of carbohydrates. So it's not the rice that's making us fat. It's the quantities that we're eating. Rice is such an essential grain, and grains are so important with lots of vitamins and minerals. So having an understanding of good carbs versus not great carbs. And I don't want to say bad carbs, because there's still a place for them. I love delicious carbs that aren't necessarily good for me. So I'm not going to say that they're bad. It's just that I need to have them in moderation. So knowing that you can still have the things that you love is really important. I think when it's a slippery slope when people eliminate, I'm not going to have chocolate anymore. And then that lasts for how long? And then they'll binge on a whole block of chocolate. So trying not to eliminate things, I think, is really important. Understanding the quantities. Carbohydrates, we said the fats is the thumb. Carbohydrates is the fist. So if you make a fist, that's the amount of carbohydrate you should be eating. If it's a cup of rice, if it's 100 grams of potatoes, if it's 100 grams of pasta, that's your carbohydrate. Now, when you go to a restaurant, you order a pasta, how big is that pasta bowl? It's probably about 3 times my fist. And that's where the issue lies. There's no issue with having pasta. The issue is the quantities that we have become accustomed to. So carbs are certainly not the enemy. Another thing is that fruit and vegetables are carbs, and we need those. So if you're going to eliminate carbs, you're essentially saying you're going to eliminate fruit and veg, which obviously makes no sense. Fruit and veg, highly important for us. And once again, it's about the portion sizes. If you're going to go and order a fresh juice, obviously that's so good for you, but think about the quantities when they make that fresh juice for you. If they're going to make fruit juice, there's going to be 4 apples, half a pineapple, and some watermelon. You would never sit down and eat that in one sitting. That's a huge amount of sugar. So why would you go and buy a juice that is that much quantity of sugar? The other thing with the juices, just on a side note, is that they often will take out all the fiber when they're juicing it. So the skin is really important with fruit and veggies. That's a side note. But yeah, so with regards to carbohydrate, having the right quantities, not eating an abundance of fruit, but having maybe 1 or 2 fruits a day, and just finding that balance. Fruit's not the enemy either. People who say that, fruit is sugar, yes, it's sugar, but it's a natural sugar. So you can't compare eating an apple with eating a fatty donut. Hopefully that makes sense. And please feel free, those of you who are playing this back, you can obviously message any questions. Those of you who are live, shoot through any questions, and we'll talk about it at the end when I stop the video. So that's the carbs. And then let's move into protein, which is when you make a palm, protein should fit the palm of your hand. So if you think about a chicken breast, if you think about a piece of steak, a nice, sirloin, or rump, a nice piece of steak, a piece of fish. What else have we got? Lentils, tofu. If you're eating tofu, it needs to be a substantial amount of tofu in order to get the right amount of protein. Now, protein is something that most of the women, pretty much every woman that I've ever trained or come in contact with and spoken about nutrition, will tell me that how much protein she's eating, and without a doubt, way under eating protein. Now, protein is something that we should have 40% of our diet should be protein. So 40% of what you take in each day should be protein. 40% of the other 40% should be carbs, and then it's 20% fat. So keep that in mind, write that down, 40% protein, 40% carbs, and 20% fat. And with regards to protein, the way that you should actually figure out the amount of protein is your body weight times by 1.2. So if I'm 50, let's call it 60 kilos, then you want to be having 140 grams of protein. Most people will probably eat about 50 grams of protein a day. That's what I found whenever women come to me and tell me what they're eating. They're eating maybe an egg or 2 for breakfast. Maybe they're having a salad for lunch that doesn't have much protein, and they're having something at dinner. So your palm size fish or steak or chicken is going to be maybe 20 to 30, if you're lucky, if it's a good piece, grams of protein. So if you're having that at dinner and you're having an egg, which is 6 grams, 2 eggs is 12 plus 30, you're not even at 50 yet. So that's where the issue lies, is that most women are not getting enough protein into their body. So I want you to keep that in mind when we start doing our plan. I'll get you to actually see what's missing, but hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what your body needs with regards to the macro breakdown. And I do think that a macro breakdown and understanding the sizes with regards to your hand is going to be the easiest way for you to learn what your body needs in terms of quantities and types of foods. So understanding your goal, you know what you need to do. If you need to be in a deficit, then you're going to need to be eating less than what you currently eat, because what you currently eat has not been working for you. If you've been eating and losing weight, great, then you are in a deficit. If you are eating and not losing weight, you are in maintenance. And if you are eating a certain amount and putting on weight, you are in a surplus. So understanding that you need to be in a deficit in order to lose weight. It's a simple equation, as I said before, of understanding your metabolism and the amount of exercise you do. So the more exercise you do, the more calories you're going to burn. But it's a really important thing to remember that you don't want to be trying to work out your calorie intake. So try not to use exercise as a means to get your calorie intake down, your calorie number down, because you're just going to be chasing your tail. The exercise should be something that you're doing because you're trying to feel better, you're trying to get stronger, you're trying to create muscle in your body. And more muscle in your body will create more energy burning because muscle is quite dense and requires a lot of calories to keep it alive and repairing. So the more muscle you can build, the more your metabolism will increase and your energy expenditure at rest will increase. So fueling your body right, understanding what your body needs, and then that simple equation of calories in versus calories out. What I'd like you to do now is actually write down a typical day. I want you to think what your typical day is. And usually most people Monday to Friday have got a typical day. I want you to write your wake up time, and I'll just show you briefly here. You're going to write your wake up time. You're going to write your meal. You're going to write your snack. If you have a snack, you might not necessarily have a snack. And this is the other thing that I just want to bring to your attention is back in the day, I don't know how many years, but there weren't such thing as snacks. There was 3 meals a day. And the 3 meals a day were breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You'd wake up and you would start work probably at 9. These days we wake up early and we start work earlier, which means that by the time it's lunch, we've had this massive break. And so snacks have come in not only to fill that void, but also as a marketing plot. So keeping in mind that snacks aren't essential. You might not need to have snacks. If you're working at a school, you might have recess and then you might have lunch. So you might want to have something, but it's not essential. If you can get through from breakfast to lunch, then that's probably going to be a better way for you to limit the calorie intake. But on the flip side, if you're the kind of person who gets to lunch ravenous, then you need to add in a snack. So writing out your times, that's what I want you to do first of all. Now, hopefully you've had a look through the Mindful Eating booklet where I gave you some ideas of healthy options. I want you to actually write out what you're going to be eating for your breakfast, what you're going to be eating for your snacks, what you're going to be eating for your lunch, and so on, so that you can actually put together your plan of for your daily nutrition. And obviously weekends would probably be a bit different for most of us. But if you can do a separate column, perhaps for what happens on weekends, I usually would allow a little bit more flexibility because if you're being so good during the week and on track with what you should be eating, then the weekends you've got pretty much either going to carry your routine through as much as possible with a little bit of leniency for perhaps, a date night or a night out with friends or whatever it is, as long as the weekend doesn't blow out. So if you're going to be narrowing down your calories during the week, let's say you've saved yourself 200 calories a day, you don't want to then go and have an extra 1,500 calories on the weekend, which is then basically crossed out all the good that you've done during the week. So it's important that you still remember that the weekends need to be somewhat still controlled and you can't blow out on every meal. Maybe one meal you can, not at McDonald's because that will just blow out completely. But really understanding that you want to have good routine, and routine is the key to succeeding in this process. Because if you don't have a plan and you don't have that routine, then there's no thought going into it and you're going to revert to old habits and you're also going to revert to things that don't bring you closer to your goal. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. I'm just going to close my door because my neighbors are out there and it's putting me off a little bit. And then I'm going to just go through some ideas, and if the girls that are live are happy to be on screen or not, then you can unmute yourself and let me know if you have any questions. So I just want to give you a rough idea though with regards to breakfast. If you're eating eggs, obviously are probably one of the best choices that I would suggest because you want to have protein in all your meals because otherwise you're probably not going to get enough protein in through the day. Having eggs, 2 eggs is great, but it's only going to give you roughly 12 grams of protein. So what I often suggest, and people initially will think I'm crazy, gets to a few weeks where they come round, but is actually purchasing egg whites from the supermarket. You can buy it in the freezer section and you just defrost it overnight in your fridge and a cup of egg whites is roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein. So that you could do plus an egg, and you can make a beautiful omelette, and you get used to that. And that's a great source of protein for breakfast. The other option for breakfast is having some protein powder in oats, porridge, cereal, or a smoothie. And that will give you extra protein. Because if you miss that morning slot of protein, just having protein at lunch and dinner isn't going to be enough to fuel you. Keeping the carbohydrates low. Again, remember the fist size of carbohydrates, because otherwise it's just way too much. And if you think that that's not enough, then you need to add in a snack time. And the snack time usually I would recommend is yogurt or nuts or a piece of fruit. So you've got all of that in the Mindful booklet. What I'm going to do, I think, just to make it more comfortable, is just turn off the video. So those of you playing back, feel free to message me any questions. But hopefully you've got a bit of an idea, and we can tweak the plan that you've currently done. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. But I'm going to just chat live with the girls that are on the screen now if they want to.